Hi, Rach. Welcome back. How are you feeling today?
Not great. I had a rough time last night and I almost relapsed. I didn't though, but I was really close.
Wow, I'm really glad that you're here and that you're willing to open up and talk about what happened. But it sounds like you had a really tough moment last night. But I want you to also acknowledge that you didn't relapse, right? And that is a really big deal. Let's talk about what led to that experience. Can you walk me through what triggered you through those feelings?
Well, yesterday after work, I had a meeting with my boss, and he was really upset with me for missing some deadlines. I've been trying really hard, but things have been slipping lately. After that, I was already stressed out, and when I got home, I realized I'd forgotten to pay some bills. It felt like everything was piling up. I started thinking that I'm never gonna get my life together, that I'm a failure, and the only thing that came to mind was using. That's usually what I would do to escape all that stress.
Okay, so it sounds like to me like there were a couple of things that were building up. You mentioned the stress from work, also the unpaid bills, and that's what led you to having those overwhelming feelings of being a failure, right? Um, so is that when the urge to start using came up?
Yeah, exactly. It was just one of those moments where I felt like nothing was going right, and using would make me feel better, at least for a little while.
Okay, so let's take a look at, closer at what is going through your mind when you got home and you saw the bills. What were some automatic thoughts? What are some thoughts that came straight to your mind?
I remember thinking, I'm such a screw up. I can't even handle basic things like paying my bills on time. And then I just felt this wave of hopelessness and like, what's the point? I'll never get my act together. That's when I started thinking about using again to forget about everything.
It sounds like those automatic thoughts are kind of self-critical, right? I'm such a screw up. I'll never get my life together. I'll never get it together. But those are pretty harsh statements about yourself. What were you feeling physically when those thoughts came up?
I remember feeling really tense. My heart was racing, my stomach was in knots, and I just wanted to shut it all out.
So, along with those critical thoughts, there are some physical feelings of tension, right? Stress in your body, which makes sense because our bodies often respond to what we're thinking, right? Let's take a step back, maybe look at those thoughts that you just had. You mentioned thinking like, I'm a screw up, I'll never get it together. Do those seem to be examples of negative thinking patterns that you've had?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm not always a screw up, but in that moment, it just felt like everything was falling apart.
Hmm. So it sounds a lot of like, or it sounds a lot like an all or nothing thought, right? And that's when we see things in extremes. We either see them as perfect, everything is perfect around us, or it's a complete disaster. Um, so when you also imagine the worst possible outcome, right? Like you're thinking you'll never get it together just because it's a bad day, it's also what we call catastrophizing, right? Does that make sense to you?
That's I do think I do tend to think in extremes when I'm really stressed out.
Okay. So it's really common, especially when our emotions are heightened, right? But the good news is once you're able to identify those negative patterns, we can work on changing them. Is that something you'd be willing to try today?
Yeah,
Okay. So let's start with that thought. I'm a screw up. Where do you think that belief comes from? Is it something about yourself that you've seen about yourself for a very long time or that you've thought about yourself?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I've always been pretty hard on myself, especially when things don't go right. I
Mm.
remember my parents used to criticize me a lot when I was younger. They'd say things like, you can't even do this right, or you're always messing up. And I guess that just stuck with me.
Okay, so and it also sounds like the belief might have roots in things you've heard growing up, and now it's showing in things that you do in your daily life, especially when they're wrong, right? Do you believe those thoughts or those beliefs are serving you now? Um, and does it often happen when you're feeling stressed?
Mm, if anything, it probably just makes things worse because I just want to give up when I think like that.
Mm. And so if you were to think about it like this, right? If you were to step outside of yourself for a moment, like maybe think of if you were in the body of like an old friend or a close friend or a coworker that was watching your life from the outside. Do you think they'd describe you that way? Would they call you a screw up?
No, I don't think so. My friends know I'm trying to get my life together. They probably say I'm working hard and trying to fix things, even if I mess up sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a really important perspective to have, right? Sometimes when we're in the middle of these negative thoughts, it helps to kind of take a step back and ask someone else how, or ask yourself how someone else would see you, right? And often, we all know this, we're much harder on ourselves than we are on anyone else, right? So let's kind of try something different. When you tell yourself, I'm a screw up, right? What does that cost you in terms of your emotions and in terms of your actions?
Mm, I'd say it makes me feel defeated, like there's no point in trying. It's almost like it gives me permission to just quit because I think, what's the use?
Right. And on the flip side, what might be the benefit of you thinking about something more balanced, like I made a mistake, but I'm trying to learn from it or I'm trying to improve it?
I think it would help me more motivated. If I believe that I could get better, I'd probably try harder instead of giving up so quickly.
Exactly, right? Negative thoughts often lead to negative outcomes. I think we were mentioning that the last time, right? But when you shift to a more balanced, compassionate thinking, especially towards yourself, right, we're more likely to take more positive steps forward. So if you were to reframe that thought of thinking, I'm a screw up, how do you think we could phrase it in a way that's more helpful, also more realistic?
Maybe I could say something like, I've had setbacks, but I'm trying to improve and I don't have to be perfect.
Right. That's a much more balanced thinking, and it's a more encouraging way of looking at, an issue. It also acknowledges that what you said, you're not perfect, right? But it also recognizes that you're putting effort to improve your situation. So now that we've gone through those things and we've reframed your thoughts, right? Let's think of how you can use this new belief to move forward. Um, the next time you're feeling triggered or stressed or overwhelmed by something, how might this new thought help you?
I think it would stop me from spiraling. Instead of going straight to thinking I'm a failure or I'll never get better, I could remind myself that I've made progress before and I'm still working on it. That would probably help me feel less desperate to use as a way to cope.
Absolutely, right? You're shifting yourself from a place of being defeated to like a place of having possibility or having hope, where you recognize that you're not going to be stuck in that pattern forever, right? And what's one action you can take the next time you're feeling overwhelmed, aside from using, what would help you align with this new way of thinking or this positive way of thinking?
I think I could take a break and do something calming, maybe go for a walk or maybe do some deep breathing. I could even, maybe even write down what I'm feeling so I can process it instead of letting it build up.
Right. Those are great strategies, right? Taking a break or using some mindfulness. We talked before about meditation also. Those techniques will really help you control or manage those negative thoughts or those automatic thoughts when they pop up, right? And, writing things down can give you a space to reflect on what you're going through, right? And like you said, it could be used, those strategies can be used before you spiral.
Yeah, I think it helped me stay grounded when things are stressful.
You're already making great strides in recognizing the patterns, right? The automatic thoughts, those negative patterns, and the fact that you didn't relapse rage it really does show a lot of strength. Let's keep working on these skills on how to manage your automatic thoughts or your negative thoughts. But I want you to know that I'm here to support you to help you build your tools for managing, right? Um, how does that sound?
Thanks. I feel a little more hopeful now. I think I can start using these techniques when things get tough again.
I'm glad to hear that. We'll continue to work on this together. Like I mentioned, you're not alone in this process, but let's plan for how you can practice reframing techniques during the next week, and then we can check in on how you're working on them on the next session. How does that sound?
That sounds good to me.
Great. So we'll pick up next time. But just remember that you've made a lot of progress today. Utilize these techniques within the week, and then we'll go ahead and catch up from there.